Hi, my name is Melinda Taylor, and I am going to speak about a book called Dear Tolstoy, Yours Gandhi, which was written by Jonathan Kislev. This is going to be my video book review. First of all, I have to say that I loved this book. I enjoyed it very much, and I enjoyed it for different reasons. One reason was because it was very well written, very well researched. It had places and dates and times. It had letters and notes, pictures, things to show that research was done. So you knew that it took place in South Africa, England, Russia, and you also knew that it took place in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. So I appreciate that historical part. And I also like the book because it is fiction. And I appreciate the fiction because, of course, that is more made up and part of the imagination and creative. And I like things like that. But the beauty of the combination of the historical and the fiction is that the historical lets you know it's genuine, real, authentic. And the fiction is the story behind it that brings it all together and makes it interesting and makes you want to read it. So that is a wonderful thing. And I like the way that Jonathan was able to have the story kind of move in time. He went back and forth between Tolstoy's point of view and Gandhi's point of view and Tolstoy's eldest daughter, Tatiana's point of view. And it would go between what was happening with Tolstoy and Gandhi to what happened once they began to have their written correspondence, to the relationship between Tatiana and Tolstoy, and it would go back and forth between when they were younger to when they were older, and it would go back and forth between what was happening in South Africa, what was happening in Russia, what was happening in England, and in the beginning and the end of the story, it has Gandhi and Tatiana meeting, and their discussion about different things that have happened in the past when Tolstoy was still alive and things like that is kind of the center, the groundwork of the book. And it goes back in time to talk about something that they were discussing at that time, and then it goes back to their conversation, and then back in time. So I also really liked the way that Jonathan did that. It was just a very, very clever and cool way to tell the story. And I really enjoyed getting to know the characters, getting to know their names, getting to know their families, the relationships between the different characters with their families, with their friends, with their loved ones. You know, you learn that Tolstoy had a difficult childhood. He lost his parents and his grandmother young. So that is a difficult thing for anybody to go through. And it explains why, when the time came that he had his own family, his own wife, and several kids, that he had a difficult time expressing his love to them, almost as if he had this fear of losing them. And so he didn't want to invest more than necessary so that it would be less likely that he would be hurt after having had so much loss. And I'm sure that he had a lot of love for his parents and his grandparents. And, you know, Tatiana had her share of anger towards Tolstoy because of the way he was. You know, he didn't give much praise or compliments or say many loving things, and he was better able to write about love than he was to express it to his loved ones, and he was even better at expressing it with strangers than with his own loved ones. And this was something that Tatiana was angry and envious of and jealous of, and this is something that Gandhi helps her to realize, that, even though, yes, of course, ideally, Tolstoy still should have been able to do that in an ideal world, but it can help people understand better why he didn't. But one thing that Tolstoy was able to do was write. And in his writing, he wrote books, fiction books that were very popular and well loved. And then later he wrote books that were more controversial, that there were some people who loved them, but there were also some people who did not. In fact, for those later writings, it had more to do with his beliefs about love and nonviolence, and his belief in different religions, such as Christianity, as he had been a Christian, and believing in Jesus, and how a lot of these religious figures in these different religions, they all talk about love and nonviolence, something that they have in common. They just have different ways of expressing that spirituality and the worship and the way that they do things. And Tolstoy wrote about how he felt that the church failed to follow those ideals of love and nonviolence. And this writing, the books he wrote, the letters he wrote, were a major inspiration to Gandhi. And Gandhi had a very close relationship with his wife and children. And his wife encouraged him to write to Tolstoy because she felt that he could help inspire him in a way that no one else could. And Gandhi at first refused. He just felt like, he wasn't good enough, or he was inadequate to write to someone like Tolstoy, because this was before Gandhi became the well-known person he ended up becoming. There was a 40-year age difference between the two. So he eventually gets the courage. He writes Tolstoy, and Tolstoy is so impressed with him that he writes him back, and so it begins, this correspondence, this long-distance friendship, this long-distance mentorship between the two. Now, Tolstoy was a mentor to Gandhi, and, he helped Gandhi to get the courage to write his own book, where he discussed ideas that were related to ideas that he had seen in Tolstoy's work and that he agreed with and believed in. He also was inspired to start his own Tolstoy's Farm, where there were many others of them around. There were many people that were inspired and had respect for Tolstoy and his work. And, they lived the way that Tolstoy believed they should live. They made their own food and all of that type of thing. And it ultimately helped to put an end to nonviolence, to put an end to discrimination using nonviolence, helping the Indian and Chinese immigrants. And Gandhi was able to be a leader for that movement and was able to successfully use nonviolence with other followers, even though they had to spend time in jail and the challenges of that for their families. They ultimately triumphed and were able to help South Africa with nonviolence. And Gandhi was also able to apply those principles to India later, after the book was written. And it's just very inspirational and wonderful that this friendship, this mentorship was able to do so much good. But I recommend reading this book. It was very good, and you will love it. Thank you.